All right, so thanks for that great introduction. And of course, you guys are embedded now in FoodTech21, and kind of what we're doing here today is really going across how technology is continuing to shift the landscape of the restaurant and hospitality business. And the lineup today is going to be pretty aggressive. We're going to have operational, but we're also going to be going into a lot more food tech elements as well. In this particular session, we're going to be getting into mobile, delivering the guest experience. And with me today, I've got the VP of Sales at Appetize, Mr. Brian Whitney. So great to have you on the session.
Great talk with you, Paul. Thanks for having us on. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So Brian, let's go into Appetize and kind of your concept, the product itself. What are some of the key elements that you guys bring to the table today?
Well, so Appetize is a all-in point-of-sale solution, front-of-house management platform for restaurants of every size, from small enterprise QSR brands all the way to large multi-store table service restaurants. We really focus, though, on the enterprise space. Kind of our differential is really that we're bringing kind of the cloud technology that, historically has only been available in a small platform that's really payments focused, forward to large enterprise brands, giving them the tool sets and the flexibility of lightweight platforms in a way that they're able to move their technology stack forward. I think what we've seen over the 10 years that we've been in business, and really specifically over the last 5 months of this new normal of post-COVID, is the need for technology that's able to be very agile and work quickly in today's environment to respond. I've spent a lot of years in point of sale. I've got about 25 years in point of sale underneath me. And I've seen kind of the evolution of the industry, and the platforms and the tool sets that we have available to us today really enable us to respond to this new market change a lot better.
Yeah, there has been some pretty significant changes. I'm continuing to be amazed at the number of business models that are kind of spawning out of just sheer innovation within the industry. So I can imagine the technology requirements that are going to be needed to just keep up with that. I want to kind of go into the product lines that you guys carry. So you're essentially offering the POS hardware as well. And are the kiosks, do you guys go as far into kiosk hardware as well?
So we're really not a hardware provider. We have partners that we use to deliver hardware to our customers that enable our software, but we are a software-focused company. That was one of the things that, as I looked at the ecosystem out there, making a specific restaurant pick a specific hardware to run a software that they need to run their business is very constraining. Giving them the options of robust, ruggedized platforms out there that make sense, broader set. But from a software standpoint, we handle all types of guest interactions with your brand. So everything from traditional cashier service to, as you mentioned, Interact or self-service. Interact is our self-service platform. And we're seeing that both in a traditional kiosk unit where a customer who's walking into your restaurant, into your brand, is able to interact with a screen either in a forecourt or at a counter or maybe even at a table. It's really the same technology that a guest is driving that transaction. But secondly, what we're seeing now is really the mobile phone as that self-ordering platform. Whether it's an app-based, kind of the traditional old school, I've got to download an app and log in, or kind of a newer way, which is kind of a web-driven ordering that has all the same benefits of an app. It's lighter weight technology for the restaurant operator, and it's a lot easier for the guest. They can typically just take a picture of a QR code or log into a simple URL, and they're immersed in your ordering experience in a way that, at least with our platform, is completely real time. So if you're out of the turkey burger, it shows up directly on the guest's hands. We can also use a location-based platform to know where that guest is ordering from. And that's one of the things, as you mentioned, the new business models that we're seeing. In the old school way, if I was a fast casual brand, people ordered at the counter, and that was it. Now, in that same physical plan of restaurant, nothing's changed. You haven't changed your parking lot. You haven't changed your driveway space. You're trying to do drive-through. You're trying to do curbside. You're trying to do takeaway. You're trying to do you're in a state that allows some counter service, and you're doing some counter service, and you've got social distance dine-in, and you want to be able to deliver stuff. But now people are sitting in the patio or in a tent in your parking lot, as I've seen with a lot of fast casuals.
Right.
So all these things have changed. And we've got to be able to respond and serve the guests not only where they are, but how they want to interact with your brand in a way that makes them feel safe. I think I saw a stat earlier back in the early days of this that said that, back in April and May, 60% of people said that they would not feel comfortable going out dining in the next 30 days. That's impactful. As we're seeing this second spike, and we're probably going to see more and more spikes of this current wave, of this current issue. We as businesses have to be able to prepare for what guests are going to want. And
For sure.
your system may be able to handle it today, but you've got to have the platforms, and not to get too technically wonky, but you've really got to have the capability technically to be able to respond to the next threat, to the next crisis, to the next change.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we've seen, is that this COVID effect on our business has compressed what we expected to be 3 to 5 years of change into 6 months or less.
Yeah.
You just look at contactless payments, which was kind of an option, kind of a need to have, and people who are early adopters used it in January. In April and May became table stakes.
Yeah.
And now
It's
it's
a
just
requirement.
expected. Right.
Yeah. So there has been a shift from an aspect of the technology side. It's kind of interesting too, because I think you guys are in the right spot, because there are such amazing movements now occurring in the tech space. I could see in the future where, we could be seeing restaurants and operations completely without hardware, meaning POS, at least front house hardware, where literally everything is done via an app or a mobile device in terms of ordering. Do you see more of your customers coming to you for those kinds of solutions, or do you still see a few operators still trying to look at what they might think is a line queue at some point down the line where they do need hardware in terms of their new requests?
I think the question you're asking is the same question that people were asking about credit cards in the 90s.
Right.
Oh, we're going to get to a cashless society. And there's some places that have gone to cashless, especially today, that have gone to cashless as a temporary. But overall, can you go to a hardware-free, or there's no staff at the front house? Probably not, because there's exceptions, right? There's always somebody who's got a question, who's got a concern, who needs to change an order, who doesn't understand. You can have the most intuitive mobile application in the world, and not everybody's going to be able to get it on the first pass.
Sure.
So, our platform is incredibly intuitive, and we see it working from 7 to 70 and everything in between. But there's always going to be a guest who has a question. So we want to be able to serve that guest. We want to be able to serve that guest in a way that makes sense. The other reality is that there's times and places when we're going to be able to order. Maybe it's from 3 feet away, maybe it's from 6 feet away, right? Maybe it's with or without a mask, we don't know. There's going to be times and places we want to order, and we want to give that high touch guest service feel to our guests. So we don't want to go completely away from hardware, but I am seeing more reliance on guest-driven transactions, more reliance on a mobile transaction being out there. But there's a blend of what makes sense for most merchants in the place.
Well, and I think we'll see this start to play out, especially around the consumer science side of it, which is more of the social behavior of how people actually interact with restaurants in the future. All right, so let's talk about a couple of new elements that have started to impose their will on technology. One being curbside, because many products on the market were not really geared for curbside, especially when you don't have dedicated spots. If you were a casual dining outfit like an Outback who have been doing a curbside for some time, they of course were prepared for that. But a fast casual concept that's an end cap with 15 other stores in there, curbside kind of presents a technology challenge. How are you guys approaching this for the future?
Well, I think that there's a couple different things that we saw with both curbside and also to a certain extent drive-through. What we saw was that there were two kinds of use cases. There were use cases of customers, like you mentioned, that had been prepared, and they had a couple spaces and they had clearly marked signs. This is for curbside, and they were prepared for 5, 10, 15% of their traffic to go through curbside.
Exactly.
The lights went out, the lights came on, and we were doing 90% of our traffic through, or 80% through of what we were doing before. So if your restaurant was doing $2 million a year, you may have lost, 10, 15% off the top. And so maybe you're only doing 1.7 a year. But now instead of doing $200,000 a year through your drive-through, you're doing 170 a year through your drive-through. Well, that changes your needs. That changes what's going on curbside. So the numbers of spaces, the ability to manage that, to be able to have a location-based platform so that guests can order and can check in. That's a key platform. And using our Interact Web platform with its location-based capabilities, that gives guests the capability to recognize to come in, to pull into a parking spot. So for instance, if you're a drive-through, instead of having that current drive-through line that, was filling your parking lot pre-COVID and, your morning rush was fine. But now it's stretching out onto the highway and the local authorities are not happy and there's no place else to go. Now we can leverage that unfortunately empty parking lot with drive-through based signage, pull into a spot, order, have the customer scan a QR code. We know based on that QR code where that guest is. We know that they're in parking space 7 or parking space 6, and we can use this for the ordering process, the delivery process, even the checkout process, so that the guests can identify where they are, and it's easy for the staff. Remember, I think one of the things that we forget about in all of this is that our staff, they had no time to adapt to this either. They are just as scared about carrying something home to their family. A lot of them have extended families in their homes. Being able to bring it to somebody who's truly susceptible, we have to be sensitive to them. So giving them the capability to go directly to their place, not have to touch 2 or 3 people, not have to do a food auction, is a better experience for the guest, and it's a better experience for our staff. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people think about, that we talk a lot about how do we serve the consumers, and clearly that's an important part. But we've got to make these technologies easy for the staff to understand, both in front of house and back of house. So knowing clearly on an order that this order is going to the parking lot or this order is going to the drive-through, and being able to adapt to that on the fly and not have to pick from a drop-down list of pre-configured options that were things that a point-of-sale company thought were pre-configured in 2019.
Sure.
Those are the kind of things that being able to have flexibility to be able to adapt that the modern platforms are able to do that some of the legacy ones aren't. And that's what we're seeing a lot of push towards.
Yeah, I love the element. I want to make sure I got this right, though, when you talk about QR codes. So if you were to spread the drive-through into individual parking spots, what you're saying is there would be temporary or semi-permanent signage that someone could just roll down their window, pop the QR code. That's going to route through the cloud in through Appetize, let the in operations know that my car is in spot 3. Whether I do a food run, et cetera. That's how it works?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We're using that QR code tied in with our Interact Web platform as a part of our point of sale ecosystem to really give that whole order. And it's not just the parking lot. Extend it further. This is a technology that we've used for years in very large format buildings where we've had thousands of seats, or thousands of individual sales locations identified individually. We can use this technology for your parking lot, for your curbside, for your door, for a to-go order, for an individual table in a restaurant. So let's say you're a fast casual brand, and again, you want to keep your guests safe. You want to keep your cashier safe. And you say, go to the table and I want to order. Well, there's 2 ways you could do that. You could go put a $1,000 tablet at every table. And, if it's an outdoor table, it's a $2,000 or $3,000 tablet.
Right.
Or you can go make a little QR code, put it on the table, have guests scan it, straight into order. Now, I see a lot of people today are using this to get to the menu. I just went to a restaurant this weekend, and they had no menus. They just had a little QR code on the table. All of us, there were 5 of us at the table. We all scanned the QR code. We're all looking on our phones. Perfectly seamless. We all knew what to do. It worked very, very well. But the server still had to come over and interact with us to order.
Yeah.
So being able to take that to the next step and be able to order another round, be able to go ahead and run a tab, check out a tab, that's really where we're seeing the next generation go.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a feedback loop? I'm looking at, from an operational standpoint inside a fast casual, because typically a fast casual, bar someone like a Chipotle or somebody that's using a line queue, which I think the line queue is going to completely change in its own right. But when you look at, let's say, a Panera Bread who has used the pickup model with, whether it's the pagers or things like that, does this have a feedback loop capability to where if I were sitting at the table, I'd be able to get notified that
Absolutely.
the product's ready?
It's tied directly into the platform. So, again, something to make it intuitive for the staff and for the customer, right?
Right.
Customers are, even my mom, who I love to death, but is not the technically most savvy person, she texts me all the time. So everybody's texting these days. Well, when you place an order in Appetize on Interact Web, when it orders ready for pickup or is about to come out, we send you a text back. And then it's not that something else somebody has to do. All the kitchen staff does is press complete on the order. The text is generated. It's sent straight through to the phone. The customer gets the update. They know exactly what's happening. So we're able to do that with no extra work, no extra steps by the staff. There's nothing that the kitchen staff has to learn that they didn't know before. There's no change in operation. We just integrated that feature so that we're able to communicate with the guests seamlessly.
Yeah, very cool. Let's talk, we've been talking about mostly limited service and QSR, fast casual. Let's move over to fine dining for a moment here and talk about that. This obviously casual dining, fine dining, upscale, hit by far the hardest in terms of the restaurant space. When you look at trying to reformat how a fine dining operation works, I could see this being a potential, at least, if anything, reducing touch points with servers and staff. Have you guys seen any fine dining operations that have started to implement these kind of strategies, and how are they doing it?
Well, we have. We've seen different fine dining, and I'll put fine dining in a category that ranges from your local diner breakfast establishment all the way to the finest white linen restaurants out there. And I think that you've had different levels of impact across the spectrum, both from the economic downturn as well as the service impact. But what we're seeing is across that spectrum, you've got a broad set of adoption. My daughter and I, we're based here in Atlanta. And so if you know Atlanta, if you've ever been through Atlanta, you know that one of the restaurants that we're known for is Waffle House. Well, my daughter and I, that's our guilty pleasures. We like to go to Waffle House. Waffle House is a very blue-collar restaurant. It's right. Not inexpensive. It's not your fine dining, but it is table service. They have a QR code-driven menu platform. And they rolled it out very, very quickly. It's very simple. It's a QR code that goes straight to a picture of their menu. Done. It was the simplest, lightest way to get to a digital menu as required. You could go from that all the way through to the more integrated platforms like Appetize can offer to a table service brand, where we're able to take your corporate menu, give your franchisees the controls of being able to understand what they need to price by channel. There may be a market today where we need to actually incent people to come and dine in our restaurant. Right. Instead of looking at giving money away to the delivery partners that are keeping us afloat, but they're taking a large premium of the sales price. Maybe we can incent diners to come into our restaurant and give them a different experience. That QR code can actually be used to drive an entirely different price point, an entirely different set of menu offerings that are available to guests in the restaurant that aren't available outside, all inside of that same ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you engage with Appetize through a QR code, from a user's experience, how much data am I transferring over into the operator there? Can I join a loyalty club? Is it something, or is it very passive? What's the process there?
And that's really been kind of the difference in the last 2-ish years of web platforms. Previously web platforms were very scaled down, and you had to go to an app to drive a full experience. You really had to be part of a mobile app that you downloaded that stored all your information that you put your wallet. Now with the electronic wallets that are on the phones, with some of the behind the scenes piping that's available, and not to mention the browser storage capability, we're able to drive a full app experience where you're able to have that same engagement with the guest, whether you're participating in a loyalty program, whether you're using multiple payments, whether you're using, whether you're even doing a very custom ordering schema. you're able to drive that entire experience through a mobile web app. And that's one of the reasons why we've done what we did, as opposed to forcing down the app path. A lot of brands,
Right.
they have their own apps, and apps are great, but there's a real concept out there of app fatigue. People may not even notice that the newest couple integrations of the Apple operating system automatically deletes apps that you don't use, because there are hundreds of apps on people's phones that aren't used
Sure.
anymore, that are just taking up space. And so it'll just automatically delete those. And then if you need them, it'll go out and re-download them to try and clear up space. That's because there's a concept out there called app fatigue. People are not downloading apps. They're not willing to download more apps to engage with brands that they don't engage with regularly. So a mobile web experience gives that same app-like experience, that same UI feel, that same native feel, but it doesn't force the user to go and download and go through an extra step. That extra step may be the difference between a guest placing an order and staying in your restaurant and going, forget it, I'm just going to go back to this other place, or I'm going to go pick up drive-thru.
Right.
And changing the experience both for you as a restaurateur, but for them as a guest.
Very cool. I want to get into, and I like the fact that mobile web is the route that you guys are taking, because I do agree. I think apps are, to a certain extent, it's very difficult. Plus the cost for acquisition, for brands to be able to get someone to become a user of the app itself. It's almost like trying to get an email address out of someone. There's a real marketing expense there to get that done. I want to get into some of the key things that operators, here on FoodTech21, we're looking for some takeaways. When you talk to operators out there that maybe for the first time they've really kind of understood this is the new normal, it's going to be the way their business model runs in the future, what key points are you guys trying to coach new or existing operators on to be prepared for in the coming years?
I think the first thing that we are trying to make sure that people understand is that there's one mistake that you can make, and really one mistake only, and that is to do nothing.
Sure.
To try something is the best and really the only route to go at this point. We as consumers, and let's make sure, we're all in the industry. We've all in some element of the industry, but we're all consumers. We're all going to restaurants. We're all going to grocery stores. We're all going to these experiences. And, for the vast, vast majority of us, we understand what people are going through. We understand that their world is upside down, and we're very tolerant of the changing environment. One day there's not plexi, the next day there is plexi, right? All these different things. And as a restaurant, I think we get really stuck sometimes on, we have this high pride in delivering the absolute best. We try that recipe over and over. We bring in multiple providers to get just the right ingredients so we can deliver just the right experience. And that's great when you have the time. As restaurateurs, we need to be able to move quickly in this market to embrace change. Don't be afraid to fail. As a mentor of mine, once used to expound, we need to think big, but start small, scale fast, and fail fast. If we see something that's not working, get it out. Go with something else. But don't be afraid to try something because, I don't know if this is going to work for everybody. It's not. It's not going to work for everybody. It's going to work for a lot of people. Give people the choice. Give people the platform. So as much as I love the web-based ordering, forcing a consumer to do web-based ordering is going to disjoin that customer from a positive experience with your brand.
Right.
We need to give consumers the choice. By the same token, forcing a customer to order from a server has the risk of disjoining them from a positive experience. So we need to look for ways that we can offer choice to the consumer inside of our platform and have a flexible enough platform that enables that choice and enables that choice as we evolve. Because this, I think we've all got this concept that at some point, to quote someone, this will all go away, right? And to a certain extent, that's true. But it's not. It's not going to go away. The concept of there could be something else out there will come up. The news will find a story, and there will be a something else in another part of the world that causes us here to go, okay, we need to change what we're doing. We need to go back to this mid 2020 paradigm. We've got to be able to respond to that. We've got to be able to move forward. Having the technology, having the agile experience, having the capability to be able to move quickly, that's key.
Yeah, so agility for sure. I love the fact that you're focusing in on the kind of just be agents of change, because that's kind of the more and more operators I talk to today, that's kind of the one thing that they've all kind of come to agreement on is, listen, we're changing operational manuals almost weekly now because we're dealing with new scenarios that you just don't anticipate, and it's becoming reality.
I spoke to one operator who said, I've stopped writing my operational manual and I've just started using Post-it notes, because they're just like, well, that one doesn't work, pull it down, put another one up in its place. It's really that's the kind of world, and that's what's going to be successful. I think what we're seeing, there are things that restaurateurs are putting in place that are going to add benefit when this all does go away, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The capability that we've educated guests on home delivery, that's a great experience, that can still give you that dining out experience without leaving your home on those times you want to do it. That's a good thing. The fact that we've educated them that there's more curbside than just your local QSR drive-through on the way home. Right. That's a good thing. So, there's a lot of things that we've done that are going to pay dividends for us down the road, which are very good things. We all look for the time when this does go away. We can all go back in the restaurants. We can all have the great experiences we all love. I'm just trying to say that we see that all of those things are absolutely true. We've just got to be able to have a platform that enables us to try those new things and try them easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, it's been good having you on today, but before you leave and before we move on to our next session, I want to get your opinion on kind of 3 categories around technology, and I'm trying to kind of get feedback from different people. So these are kind of part Appetize, but also the rest in trends, and just if you could rank these. So I'm looking at cashless QR, beacon transactions. Obviously, this is your bailiwick. That's number 1. Tech-driven ghost and virtual restaurants is number 2. And then grab and go crossovers, kind of a hybrid between C-store and food service with prepared foods. If you could rank those in terms of preparedness as an operator, where would you go?
Well, I think the important thing is the answer to all of those for an operator on day one looking at it should be yes. Just do them all.
Implement them all.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, you can. I mean, implementing a virtual ghost kitchen takes cost and location and more scale and more capability. I think that those are hard things. There was one kind of sub-bullet you mentioned in there, beacons. I think beacons are a great idea. I think that they are probably the most overstated technology value in the world. In that there's so much that you can do without the reliance on beacons, with geofencing inside of the mobile devices themselves, and then QR code driving that. Obviously, a QR code gives you the most flexibility, in my opinion, in my experience, and it's the easiest one to implement. Like I said, even if it's just a QR code of your menu, but really going all the way through to a QR code based ordering and then expanding that's the lowest effort and the highest value. Being able to go to more self-checkout, that's another trend that we're seeing. So that part C store would probably be the second, with a beacon or virtual restaurant being third.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I think you're dead on there, because those types of trends, and I could see where you guys' product would really kind of lean in to what's happening in those categories. And these are all areas where, whether you're limited service, you're full service. I saw a full service restaurant the other day that was offering full service menu items that were pre-prepared, but they were in a takeout section in a chiller, and you could literally go in and get your steak au poivre, your mashed potatoes, your sauteed asparagus, and a bottle of wine, and it was a carryout, but it was all pre-cooked. And this was a fine dining restaurant that was doing this. So, I mean, for those kind of things to be happening, the models are literally being reshaped as we talk here today, for sure.
Very much, and taking that technology and pairing it with a self-checkout experience that's either,
Yep.
we've used for many years. We've actually used with a very large, well-known global entertainment brand, kind of a self-checkout feature on a mobile app
Right.
that we've been developing, but also just a plain self-checkout kiosk enables that guest and our staff to reduce a touch. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where the one thing that we need to be all focused on is, you mentioned earlier going cashless or going without point of sale. I think that those are the extremes and we'd love to get there. What we need to focus on is how can we pull 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 touches out of that transaction for that guest. Just make it just a little safer for your staff, a little safer for the guest, build that experience. That drives those number of people who don't feel confident about dining out to feel more confident. The fewer touches we can drive, the better.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway from the session here today is a lot of operators really need to start building that into their systems, and both for their staff, but also for the consumers themselves. If you can reduce sick employees, you're going to reduce a lot of operational costs and training costs. I mean, it's definitely a trickle-down effect, and of course for the customer, that's just the holy grail, the least touch points I can get.
It may not even be about reducing a sick day for employees. It's increasing their feeling that they're safe, increasing their sense that we as restaurateurs do care about our staff and do care about them. A lot of people refer to them as families, and in many cases they are.
For sure.
So but again, it comes back to, do you have, as an operator, do you have the technologies that enable you to do this agilely, to do it in a very lightweight, easy to go fashion, or do you have to go, I've got to go rebuild my database, or I've got to go build a new menu, or I've got to layer a system over to the side and have a tablet and train my kitchen and now look at another place to make sure that the orders are coming through, or add weight to my expo. That's not what we want to do. We want to make sure that it's literally just going into a platform and saying, turn on mobile. Make that item available. Great, done.
Yeah, I like it. Brian, it's been great chatting with you today. I feel like we could go for a couple hours here on this topic. Thank you so much for joining in. Of course, you guys watching here, make sure and hit the Q&A buttons on all of our sessions throughout the day. You'll be able to talk with Brian. You're going to be able to get input from a lot of our speakers live. And of course, if you have not already, spread this out there. If you've got people out there that maybe in your operations, send the link over to FoodTech21 in our virtual events program. That's a great way for them to even join the conversation today. So thanks again, Brian, and we'll see you on the next session, everyone. So stay tuned.